It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 681 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record. I've got a fun show lined up for you today. Joining me as my guest is PJ Bouten. PJ is co-founder and CEO of Showpad. We're going to be talking about sales enablement. Now, before we get to the conversation with PJ, I want to spend just a minute talking to you about the Sales House, the B2B Sales Learning Accelerator. You know, sales is hard work. We've talked about this on the show many, many times. It can seem like a lonely pursuit out there trying to hit your number, but the fact is you don't have to sell alone. That's the good news. If you just come invest a few minutes a day on the Sales House, help you just get 1% smarter, 1% better every day, make your career take off. Now, here's what you're going to find this week in the Sales House. We've got a sales masterclass with Barbara Weaver-Smith. She wrote the book Whale Hunting about how to land large accounts. We're going to be talking about how small business can close big deals with big companies. We've got a new course in our 9-Minute Sales Academy. This is the best first question to ask on an initial sales call. Very interesting. I'll make sure you check that one out. As always, we have a weekly live coaching mentoring hour for the entire Sales House community. And we've also got a live workshop with special guest Julie Hansen. And Julie's going to be presenting how to flip your presentation or your demo and increase your win rates. That's flip your presentation and increase your win rates. So, and as always, unlimited access to me through our Sales House Facebook group. So if you get a chance, come check it out. It's at thesaleshouse.com/accelerate. Go to thesaleshouse.com/accelerate. We look forward to seeing you in the house. All right, let's jump into it with my guest today, PJ Bouten. We're going to be talking about sales enablement, which is a hugely popular topic these days. How do you put salespeople in the position to win more deals? So among the topics we're going to discuss today is the importance of personalization in sales enablement. And we're going to talk about why Showpad focuses on the engagement with the content, not just providing it, but how do you facilitate interaction and create a collaborative environment with your buyers. And also we're going to talk about why providing content isn't enough, why salespeople have to be trained on the content you provide, not just be content providers or content facilitators, but actually understand the content they're providing. Now, that may seem obvious, but really not to all companies. So all that and more with PJ Bouten. Here we go. PJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andy. Glad to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here. So sort of standard question I ask all my guests to start the show, which is, in your mind, what is the single biggest challenge facing sales reps today?
The single biggest challenge for sales reps today is their buyers. Their buyers are way smarter, they're way more educated. They have all the information at their fingertips. So it's the informed, empowered buyer of today. That's their biggest challenge.
And the challenge being that they're more informed than the sellers?
The challenge being how to deal with them, how to be relevant for the empowered buyer. How do you add value in the sales conversation? How do you make sure that actually your buyer still wants to talk to you, still wants to make time to listen to you, and then actually through adding value in that process, a transaction happens. But I think the challenge for salespeople of today is really buyers are more informed, more empowered, and it's really hard to be at the level of your buyer because they have so much information. They can find so much out about your product just before talking to you, or by connecting to their network, or by just watching YouTube videos, or reading reviews on G2 Crowd or stuff like that.
Sure.
So it's really hard. Being in sales is hard, for sure.
Yeah, it's always been hard. I mean, as somebody who's been in it for a really long time, it's always been hard. But in terms of maintaining relevance to buyers, because I agree, I think there's 3 R's of selling. There's readiness, relevance, and resilience. Is, from the relevance standpoint, we all hear the statistics. You've got some of the statistics on your website. 80% of buyers, report they find no value in their interactions with salespeople. Why is that? I mean, I don't think things have changed that much. I mean, what's sort of gone wrong? What's gone off the rails? Because with all the technology we have available, it's not just available to the buyers. Everybody sometimes forgets it's also available to the sellers as well.
Yes. And I think that's where obviously a lot of organizations run into challenges, because in terms of how they're organized, in terms of obviously sales today, they're so dependent on marketing as well, making sure that they there's the right content, there's the right messaging that's segmented in terms of buyer persona, sales stages. So to be relevant, it requires a really, being relevant today, because ultimately there's a lot of selling today has already shifted online or through e-commerce portals or
Sure.
B2B. So ultimately, what remains or what will remain in the future is the high value add selling, where you're negotiating on price when it's services involved or installation or things like that. And then to be a successful salesperson, you're very dependent as well on the combination of the marketing organization, the sales organization, your IT organization, your digital strategy of your company, that it actually all comes together. And ultimately, that's something that takes time to get right. That's a transition where a lot of companies today are going through, investing in content management, investing in CRM, investing in marketing automation. And a lot of companies have invested in these technologies. But then I ask usually CEOs or marketing leaders or sales leaders, which investment have you made in terms of empowering your salespeople, making sure they're equipped with the right tools and technology, and that really help them to be more relevant, help them to deliver a better buyer experience. And then it usually is, some might answer, hey, we've invested in CRM, but most people actually hate CRM systems. It's more of an admin tool, and you have to more
Sure.
oversight by management. Hey, we've invested in content management. Well, it's mainly a repository, and ultimately, once salespeople start downloading it, changing slides, and we've had customers at Showpad where there were stories of salespeople actually selling $1 million products that didn't exist anymore. So that happens, and marketing automation is great, but it's mainly to the benefit of the marketer and the automation and that side. And so the challenge is that it's a combination of technology, transformation, change management, and I think that's also why it's taking time, and that's why it's so exciting, I believe. So.
Well, it is taking time. I mean, I certainly, you could make a case that given all the investment that's been made in sales tools and sales technologies over the last 5 to 10 years, so I call the golden age of sales. Independent statistics and reporting and say, it's not really helping. Right?
No, because most of those sales tools aren't built with the sales rep in mind. That's a challenge. Not a lot of there are, but not all of them. For sure.
Is the issue that, which I think it's partly the issue, but is also the issue, and I ask CEOs of sales tools companies, I've interviewed hundreds for the show. They're not really designed with the buyer in mind either.
No, it's a combination, not designed for the sales, not designed for the buyer, and also in a silo where, again, ultimately we can't forget that sales are really dependent on marketing as well, and delivering content and buyer, as we call it, buyer or seller experiences. At Showpad, like our customers can create seller experience, and it's really thinking through about how do we, you could call it, an advanced way of guided selling, but it's where you combine content, ways of presenting, ways of navigating, and then also linking it with data and artificial intelligence. It's kind of like bringing all those things together to really deliver that better buyer experience. And it's something that the marketer is dependent on the salesperson to because the salesperson is an essential part of delivering that buyer experience, and then actually providing the right inputs and doing the storytelling and doing the empathy part and being the person who drives that sales process. But then also the salesperson is dependent on the marketer to make sure there's content, there's messaging, there's where that it can use in different situations, where there's the right tooling and technology available to them as well in terms of presenting, sharing, checking. And so it's complex, but it's fun, and there's still a long way to go, for sure.
So one question, because we're going to talk about this topic of sales enablement, we sort of jumped into it already, and is that oftentimes it seems like when we talk about sales enablement, which is, I don't know, some people define it sort of 3 legs, right? Content, coaching, training, using technology to deliver it in the moment of the buyer journey. But it seems like we lose the customer in there a lot. And, when we talk about enablement, we talk about, the buyer experience. I mean, you have, again, on your website, the statistic, CEB reports 53% of buyers report the buyer experience. I would argue it's 100% of buyers that the buying experience is a decisive factor in their decision. I mean, I don't think it's half. If it's only half, basically it means it's not a factor at all. I mean, I think what we overlook is while we need to have all of our tools and technologies, it seems like the part we still miss with enablement is helping our people, to the point you talked about before, is how do we help our people build better relationships with the people that they're actually selling to? Because without the relationship, none of it else matters, because it's not going to go anywhere.
No, and I think, to me, that's if we look at hiring salespeople at Showpad, for example,
Mm-hmm.
one thing I always look for is empathy. I think one of the really underestimated traits of a good salesperson is being an empathic partner to your buyer. I think you need to combine it today with, in the past, relation is important, but I think the challenging part today is that salespeople need to be able to have those relationships at scale, throughout time zones, languages, geographies, different products. Depending on what they're selling, it could be quite complex to maintain those relations, and that's where they need technology to really empower them. And the way that we see how we can help the sales rep of the future, if you want it, for me, it's a combination of man and technology. I don't believe that sales will ever be fully replaced by any automation
AI, right.
or robots, because there's a human part to selling that needs to be there.
Right, I agree.
And then, so the way that we look at it at Showpad is the combination of man and machine, and where the machine being technology. And I like to make a comparison with the car manufacturing industry 100 years ago. You needed a ton of people to assemble the big parts of a car. It's if you Google pictures of the Ford Model T production line, you'll see hundreds of people assembling the big parts of big pieces of the car. And today, if you would look at a Tesla, today in their tent, right? But if you look at the Tesla, it's all automated. It's robots. The big assembly, even the easy and medium complex things robots can do. But then the finishing of the car, even Elon Musk said it himself. He underestimated. He said, like, robots can actually do everything in the car. It's a combination of man and technology. People with tools and technology, or think about glasses that in augmented reality help them, power tools. And in marketing and sales, it's the same. If you think about sales and marketing, it's the simple marketing and sales tasks today are increasingly being automated and digitalized. But then there's the human part, where there always is going to be a need for humans being powered by technology and smart tools. But it's figuring out what are the right tools, what is the right technology, what is the right level of automation. How does that buyer experience? But to know that, you have to start from your buyer. To your comment, that buyers are, a lot of the time, people tend to forget to think or start from the buyers. So ultimately, to figure out that challenge, it's starting from the buyers, but then putting it into perspective from your sales and marketing organization and the technology needed to make sure you can deliver on that better buyer experience.
Yeah, well, thinking back to the comments you made about building relationships at scales, is actually, I don't think that part's really changed. So
it didn't change with LinkedIn or with the social networks.
Well, it's certainly given you access, but I think the fact is that saying you're building a relationship through LinkedIn is like saying you're building a relationship through email. It's not substantially different. I mean, in terms of, yes, you can connect with somebody, but the next level then is engaging, and very little engagement in general takes place that way, either email or LinkedIn or social. I mean, that's why you take that next step oftentimes and have a call or a personal meeting or whatever. I think I'll go back. I think that's still our big issue. If we look at CSO Insight data, we look at Forrester data, that it's all doom and gloom, right? Nobody's making quota, close rates are dropping, so on and so forth. there's, they're data points, right? Are they right? Yeah, I don't know. But if we take them in aggregate, there's something happening there that we're not paying enough attention to, I think, right? Given the fact that we've got all this technology coming into the field. I mean, if we've got, the SaaS business with what I consider sort of really low close rates, and that they accept those as sort of acceptable because, hey, we're filling the top of the funnel and we can always close. Yeah, that's not sustainable over a period of time, right? You need to learn how to become more effective in your selling, which starts with being able to build effective relationships. I mean, I think if you look at, again, the data point of, high number of no decisions coming out of pipelines, well, that's due, I believe, absolutely convinced over all my years of experiences that that's due to just fundamental failure right in the beginning of the relationship building. And we can't automate that part. So that's the part is like, that's the thing I think that's missing with enablement these days is, how do we add this aspect into it? Because we've got content. You guys are, kicking butt on the content side. You bought Learn Course, so you're integrating in the training and the coaching, but where do we get the human side?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously, Showpad has a ton of engagement tools, for example, that we, in terms of how we can personalize presentations, how you can share the content, how you can find out how your buyers interact with that content, and so we do provide a ton of tools and technology already there in terms of to facilitate that relation build, and so I think ultimately for me, if you look at, and then I talk from a Showpad perspective, and then we can make the bridge more general. But from a Showpad perspective, it's about today we're basically the only platform that combines content, readiness, and engagement. And the engagement part is definitely about empowering and facilitating interaction and making the human connection and really collaborating, creating a collaborative environment with your buyer. In terms of how it happens in day to day, obviously, I think there you're highly dependent on the use case of your organization, the product that you're selling, and in terms of how I call it the use case, but it's a Showpad use case, right? So we look at our customers. Do they have a direct sales force or not? Do they have a big indirect channel? Do they do a lot of field sales, or is it a lot of inside selling with WebEx and screen sharing? And to the point of scaling, relationship building, there's people at Showpad who make 1.5-2 million quota with basically spending a lot of time doing WebExes and online demos, and that's how they're masters in creating networks and leveraging networks, and they use Messenger and WhatsApp, and they get on a Hangout and a Zoom, and so it's the but they're doing that one-on-one though with people. But they're doing that one-on-one, and they're investing time in the relationship. They're investing time in getting to know the prospect. They invest. I think that is that's ultimately a kind of a
that's what I think is one of the myths about what we think about modern selling is you'll hear people that have the SDR platforms say, hey, you can personalize at scale, and I think that's an oxymoron, right? I don't think there is such a thing as personalizing at scale. You have to personalize by being personal.
Yep. To your point, I think a lot of companies, if I have a lot of SaaS CEOs and executives among my friends and people that I know, and if we talk about scaling or sales and marketing organizations, you hear a lot of people who are dialing back the highly automated, high, super high volume, like blasting out thousands of emails with ultimately, even today, if I look at myself, like those emails, I never open them anymore, right? They filter out. I just don't pay attention. So that personalization can only happen with actually a human really making the connection, investing the time, maybe crafting a special email, and before that email, really thinking through, how can I leverage my network to connect with this person? How can I combine certain information I find online or recent events with then, something that I can offer them or trigger them to really pay attention to what I'm writing or when I'm calling to grab their attention. And that's really hard for machines. But technology can definitely help there to facilitate that and to be there. I fully agree.
I would have killed for LinkedIn when I was back in the day when I was selling, carrying my bag and so on. I mean, that's yeah, that's incredibly valuable, because for building that relationship, as you talked about, finding the common points that you can talk about, you can initiate some sort of engagement, even a small talk level with somebody. Yeah, technology is invaluable, and if they're not using it, which unfortunately they don't when they do that, sort of quote unquote mass personalization, yeah, you're really missing an opportunity.
Yeah, and I think ultimately sales is also it can be very. I think today as well, people underestimate sometimes. Again, depends on the product and what you're selling, but
Sure.
At Showpad here, sales is also it's a team sport. Actually, you're carrying a bat, you're carrying a quota, but it's very much a team sport where you also have to build the connections into your own organization. Know the engineers, spend time with sales engineers, with customer success. Like the most successful people I found in our organization are people who are also very good networkers inside their own their own company and know people. And this week, yesterday, I was in Basel visiting a potential customer, and the salesperson he did his homework and he really saw, hey, PJ, I know that I see that you're connected to the chief digital officer of this company. I actually have a visit there with a person reporting to that chief digital officer. Maybe is there a way, and the person was lucky. I had a free morning in my agenda. Right. I jumped on the plane, was there for the first meeting and things, that's a smart sales rep. He leverages his own CEO, to move a deal forward, and I think that's how it's ultimately done.
And again, but just to my point and the point you're making too, is it was personal though.
Yeah,
this is
that's very personal. That's true.
Yeah.
I could jump on a plane every morning, but Showpad has 1,300 customers now. So, we want to add a lot more to that. So it would be
as you should, right? Yeah, well, you have to use the CEO wisely, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Soon you'll just be calling on those that are the $1 million plus deals.
Those are the deals that we like.
Those are the deals you like, right? So, we sort of got around this. I mean, another point we had talked about before, I wanted to get back to, is you talked about the relevance and maintaining relevance. Is one thing I see is that, having these tools are great, but what I see is sometimes is that some reps, I'm not going to say all, but some reps see that now, okay, well, I've got this tool, I've got this content, therefore I don't really have to learn it, right? Because it's available. And I think this is another misapprehension that a lot of salespeople have is the technology facilitates your ability to present or deliver certain content. But the difference between you and somebody that's really kicking butt is they've mastered that content. And you've just said, yeah, it's available and I can provide it to you at the right time. And there's a huge difference in that.
There is a huge difference, and you just delivered more or less the pitch I did to my board when I sold them on buying LearnCore.
Right.
Because Showpad, we start off from the content side, right? It's very content focused. The first thing we want to do with our customers is solve the content struggle, which is real, which is costing a lot of time, which is really a tough thing for many organizations. Mm-hmm. And we already had great engagement tools to present, share, measure, analytics, all that you want. But if you can have the best content, you can have the best engagement tools. But if your salespeople are not trained and coached in the right way, all your investments are basically, undone and, not paying off. You'll never get the top line growth that you want. And ultimately, and Showpad, to your point of it's not because the content is available or that people can maybe even follow a training or even have a training video or content available that they'll be successful. You have to measure it. You have to really learn and see how people are mastering certain messaging products, and that's where the LearnCore technology is really awesome, because they have this pitch IQ functionality where basically you can design a training module. People follow trainings. They go to they watch a video. They go through some slides, maybe a PDF, and then there's a test. And then as the test or part of the test could be, hey, maybe it's the sales manager asking, look, I'd like you to pitch me this product in 2 minutes. Please focus on this and this and this. And then you hit a button, 3, 2, 1, and you can just record yourself. Keep recording yourself until you feel like, hey, this is something I want to send to my manager. that person can really give feedback super easily with sliders, and we've seen it. We had Showpad customers being LearnCore customers, and to me that ultimately needs to be integrated. And Showpad already pitched 3 or 4 years ago, even, hey, we have training functionality in our product, but it's basically just making the content available.
Right.
It's not because the content is available that people will be trained and coached, or it's not because they do a 1 year, or once every 6 months they follow a certain training that they'll be, it's training today. Products evolve so fast, the market evolves so fast, companies move so fast that training and coaching needs to be ongoing, needs to be integrated together with your content, together with the tools and technology that you're using to engage with your buyers, to prepare meetings, to make sure on the administrative side your CRM is up to date. And so that LearnCore piece, that training and coaching was a really important missing piece of the puzzle for us. And there's other vendors that solve it through integrating, and we also integrate with them. But for me to be really successful, to really talk about true sales enablement, it needs to be a fully integrated story. I believe that's where you're going to deliver a ton of value. We still have work there as well to do from our side to really fully. Obviously, we acquired a company a couple of weeks ago. It's been 3 or 4 weeks now, something like that. But it is truly our vision to work towards that fully integrated, where it becomes a blend of content, training, coaching, feedback, analytics, where it's, again, the vision of empowering salespeople, augmenting them with technology and enablement. So,
yeah, to me, it seems, when I look at enablement, it seems like the missing leg of the stool, if you will, is, I call it education. So, we train people to processes, we train people about, products, we can train people to be relevant. But how do we make people just smarter about sales, right? And I think that right now we put the onus on sellers to go learn that on their own, right? Go read a sales book. And it's that whole layer of sort of, I'll call it the art of selling, but it's not really not the art, because there's science involved as well, and in understanding, the behaviors and the habits you should have and so on. And to me, it seems like that's really an opportunity for sales enablement to close the loop, is to say, okay, we've got training now. Now we need education. Because to me, training's about compliance, right? I like to use the term, you train pets, you educate people. So, we train people to be compliant like pets, but what are we doing to educate people? And I think that's still a gap that needs to be filled.
I like how you see, how you call it education. That's probably, we're calling it readiness, and I think education needs to be part of that readiness.
Yeah, I consider that education part of what I call sales readiness. Might be a little different than yours, but yeah.
Yeah, but also in that field, I think there's, because a solution like LearnCore, it's rarely bought by HR, and also a lot of the compliance part, where you say like the training, that's like usually compliance, and that's even usually HR or risk.
Well, no, by compliance I meant compliance with your sales process, compliance with it, and because again, I think one of the issues you see, and you're familiar with a lot of people in SaaS, as am I, is that one of the things I think that I see a lot of times is that reps, given that there's such an emphasis on their metrics these days and how they're measured, is they tend to sell to the metrics rather than developing themselves to be the best version of themselves possible, which may not. So the compliance really is, comply with my sales process because my manager's on my back to make sure we get X coverage on our pipeline, yada, 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 rather than saying, how do I develop to be the best version of me possible?
Yeah. And that's something, even at Showpad, that's a daily conversation between on the like, how much do you focus on activity and measuring that, and obviously I've been running Showpad now almost 8 years, and to the point that yes, definitely good sales reps have good activity, but good sales reps also do some very smart things next to that, which is again leveraging their networks, really being that trusted partner, consultant to their buyer or customer, really developing, investing in that relation, using data, relevant data in the sales process to their customer. There's a ton of things and it's really hard to measure sometimes, or hard to measure than just the activity, and it's it's a tough balance sometimes because because then you might find a person who has a ton of activity but doesn't get to the result. So
Yeah.
Where does it go wrong? And that's yeah.
Well, arguably, I think that we could look at SaaS and say that's probably the majority of the reps are that way. And yeah, that's not sustainable, right? So how do we change that?
And then there's the whole outbound kind of, obviously, but definitely in SaaS, I feel, I mean, there's obviously been the last years a huge focus on outbound and developing that part of the organization and the skills and metrics and tool. And there's a whole bunch of really exciting technology and tools there. But yeah, I do feel that there's only a few of them who really deliver value, and you can spend a ton of money on building a big outbound machine, but then notice that the machine isn't delivering what you want or not value.
No, absolutely. And I think this, that I love the positioning you guys take in terms of the buyer experience, and I find sometimes that one of the things that's really sort of interesting is when you teach reps what value really is in the context of selling, that you can sort of open their eyes somewhat, because I think it's really amorphous and undefined for most reps. They think, delivering a white paper or something is value, and it may not be in the case of the particular. And if we could, again, this gets back to sort of the human element and sort of the lack of coaching in terms of, do people really understand the purpose of every call they're making? Right? It gets down to that level is, okay, what's your value plan for this call? But really what the value plan is what does the customer expect to learn from you today that they didn't know before?
And to be able to deliver that learning, I think the most important skill there is being able to listen and being able to
Absolutely. Because you need to know the answer to that question before you get there, right? You have to be prepared with it. And I think this is...
The meeting we had there yesterday in Basel was like, it was a great meeting because we were there. We had scheduled actually only an hour. We were ultimately there for 2, and the first hour, the person who's running the sales effectiveness initiative there, we were able to let her talk for 1 hour just by asking, and it's Perfect. A ton of information, and it was quite one of the younger sales reps here at Showpad, and I told him after the meeting, like, you did really, really great, because I asked a couple of questions that really triggered her, that really gave us, like, we had 6-7 pages in my Moleskine written full of information, and that's the basis of that. That's a great basis to then start developing that relation, understanding what Absolutely. Value for your prospect and customer, and then really delivering on that. And that's awesome. Those are great meetings. And then
and that young salesperson gets it, right, which is good. That's
to
good.
your point, like, how do they understand what value is? And it's seeing some of those, and then seeing some of those initial meetings evolve into a $1 million deal or a multi-million-dollar deal, and that's when people fully get it.
Love it. Okay, unfortunately, we're out of time, PJ, but thank you very much. Great conversation. And tell folks how they can connect with you or find out more about Showpad.
I'm on Twitter with my Twitter handle Pieterjan, but that's maybe too hard. So maybe just go to Showpad. If you want to find out more about our product.
Well, Pieterjan is spelled in the title of this episode. You can look that up. It's not that hard.
All right, that's awesome. So people can, or pj@showpad.com if you want to get in touch.
Excellent. Always. All right. Well, thank you very much. Great conversation. I look forward to doing it again.
Thank you. Cheers.
Okay, friends, that was Accelerate for the week. First of all, I want to thank you for joining me. I want to thank my guest, Pieterjan Bouten. Join me again next week as I welcome Eric Barker to the show. Eric is author of the best-selling book, Barking Up the Wrong Tree, The Surprising Science Behind Why Everything You Know About Success Is Mostly Wrong. It's one of my favorite books of the year. Lots of great advice for sellers in this book, and we're going to be talking all about it next week here on Accelerate. So before you go, don't forget to check out the Sales House, the only all-in-one sales learning accelerator for B2B sales professionals. See it at saleshouse.com/accelerator. All right, thanks again for joining me. Until next week, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.